Okay, welcome to segment 8. Go to Micah. We just did Jonah, now we're going to go to Micah. Micah. We're moving along here. We are now, after this segment, we'll be halfway through the 12, and we'll continue on next week. Micah we'll do the background of Micah this week, and then I'll finish up with Micah in the 9th segment. But tonight we'll look at a little background of Micah and kind of see where we are with things at this point in the study of these prophets. Micah chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "The word of Yahweh which came to Micah of Moresheth in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, which he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem." Micah was from the city of Moresheth, and we'll look at that in a little closer later. And here it says, the word of Yahweh came to him in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. And you notice there's no kings of Israel listed here, because Micah really was, his main concern was Judah. Micah was a contemporary of Isaiah. If you read Isaiah 1:1, you'll see Isaiah also spoke to these kings, as well as it adds Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, that the prophet Isaiah spoke to. And the message concerns, it says, both Samaria and Jerusalem, but as we see as we go through this, it's primarily, for Micah now, it's directed to the southern kingdom of Judah. If you would, you can turn to 2 Kings, chapter 17. And again, you can keep a ribbon in Micah if you want, because we will be coming back. But 2 Kings, chapter 17. Here on this chart, I want to show you this because the prophets that we've looked at, well, Obadiah and Joel really were prophets later on, I believe, that came later on in history during the time of the Babylonian. But the other 3 prophets that we looked at so far, Jonah, Amos, and Hosea, were all prophets pretty much directly to northern Israel. And I listed at the top of this, the prophets of the 8th century. These are the prophets that spoke in the 8th century BC, of the ones that are in the Bible. And you can see here on the left-hand side of this chart, the kings of Israel, and the time period when these prophets spoke. You have Jeroboam, Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah, Hoshea. Those were the kings that were in power in northern Israel in the 8th century BC, before they were taken into captivity by the Assyrians. Then on the right-hand side, these are the kings of Judah. Now, I looked at this, I feel like it was looking like a political map. I got the blue states and the red states, but it really wasn't, that wasn't the reason I did blue and red is because they contrast very well, but I guess that's for Brad, just a little politics where they're afraid. But anyways, the kings of Judah, and these are the kings that are mentioned in these prophets: Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. Again, these dates, they don't line up exactly, especially because in doing in the columns, I can't get everything to line up just perfectly. But it gives you kind of an estimate of the time period that these kings spoke. And as you see, these are the prophets: Jonah, Amos, and Hosea. These are the prophets who spoke to these kings of northern Israel. And Jonah specifically then went on to Nineveh, but his ministry was to northern Israel. At this time period in the 8th century, there were basically 2 prophets that were speaking to the southern kingdom of Judah. Isaiah prophesied a long time, from Uzziah all the way through the end of Hezekiah's life is Isaiah. And then Micah, which we're looking at here, prophesied during this time of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. And I think particularly of interest that we're going to look at is what happened with this king, Ahaz. Jotham was a good king. Hezekiah was a good king. Ahaz was a bad, bad king. And we'll look about that here in a little bit. But this just gives you this layout of the prophets, what I call the 8th century prophets that spoke during this century. Also, just an idea, out in the east of Israel, way over here, was this great kingdom of Assyria. During the time of Jonah up here, the nation of Assyria was not the great mighty power yet. But within 70 years, they were a powerful nation, and they carried Israel into captivity. And then they were very powerful and almost took out the southern tribe of Judah too. So the Assyrians went from being not the superpower to being a superpower in a very short period of time during this 8th century BC. So the prophets Jonah, Amos, and Hosea were prophets in northern Israel who spoke before the time that the northern kingdom of Israel was taken into captivity. God sent prophets so that the people would repent of their evil ways, but they did not depart from their sin and suffered the consequences. And Israel was carried away into captivity into Assyria. Now, from this point, we're going to kind of shift from northern Israel to Judah. And Micah is where we're making this switch in time and also the direction to who the prophecies are directed towards. Micah is to Judah. But I thought just to sum up the nation of Israel, we could read this here in 2 Kings about why Israel was taken into captivity into Assyria. 2 Kings 17:6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and carried Israel away into exile to Assyria and settled them in Halah and Habor on the river of Gozan in the cities of the Medes. Verse 7. Now this came about, this is why Israel was taken into captivity, because the sons of Israel had sinned against Yahweh their God, who had brought them up from the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and they had feared other gods. And they walked in the customs of the nations whom Yahweh had driven out before the sons of Israel, and in the customs of the kings of Israel which they had introduced. Verse 9, the sons of Israel did things secretly, which were not right against Yahweh their God. Moreover, they built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set for themselves sacred pillars, and the Asherim on every high hill, and under every green tree. And there they burned incense on all the high places, as the nations which Yahweh had carried away to exile before them. And they did evil, provoking Yahweh. They served idols, concerning which Yahweh said to them, you shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets and every seer, saying, turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments, my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you through my servants, the prophets. Now, as I mentioned before, to northern Israel here, prior to Jonah, you had two of the greatest prophets ever in the history of Israel, and that was Elijah and Elisha. Now, there's no books written by Elisha and Elijah, but those two prophets, their prophecy was also to northern Israel. They were prophets to northern Israel. So they had a lot of really great men who were speaking this truth over centuries to repent of your evil ways. Verse 14, however, they did not listen, but stiffened their necks like their fathers who did not believe in Yahweh their God. They rejected his covenants and his covenant which he made with their fathers, his warnings which he had warned them. And they followed vanity and became vain and went after the nations which surrounded them, concerning which Yahweh had commanded them not to do like them. They forsook all the commandments of Yahweh their God and made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves, and made an Asherah and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. Then they made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire. That means that they offered their children on sacrifice, their babies. They burned them in the fire. And practiced divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh, provoking him. So Yahweh was very angry with Israel and removed them from his sight. None was left except the tribe of Judah. Also Judah did not keep the commandments of Yahweh their God, but walked in the customs which Israel had introduced. Yahweh rejected all the descendants of Israel and afflicted them and gave them into the hand of the plunderers until he had cast them out of his sight. And when he had torn Israel from the house of David, they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel away from following Yahweh and made them commit a great sin. The sons of Israel walked in the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them until Yahweh removed Israel from his sight, as he spake through all his servants the prophets. So Israel was carried away into exile from their own land to Assyria until this day. And that was here when they were carried away into Assyria. So meantime, while this was happening, these kings were in southern Judah, and Judah now also commits the same type of sins. Even when Hosea was speaking to northern Israel, he had a few little warnings also to the southern kingdom of Judah. And these are in your notes. Hosea 4:15, he said, though you play the whore, O Israel, let not Judah become guilty. And Hosea 5:5, it said, the pride of Israel testifies to his face. Israel and Ephraim shall stumble in his guilt. Judah also will stumble with them. It seems like it was just a matter of time before the same idolatry, the same sins that caused Israel to go into captivity were going to occur in the southern kingdom of Judah. And that's exactly what happened. Certain rulers didn't listen. King Ahaz is one of the kings that reigned during the time of Micah's prophecy. And he brought great sin. Look at 2 Kings. We're here. Go to chapter 16 of 2 Kings. Give you a little idea of what was happening in the southern kingdom of Judah at this time. 2 Kings 16 verse 1. In the 17th year of Pekah, the son of Remaliah, Ahaz the son of Jotham, king of Judah, became king. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king. And he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do what was right in the sight of Yahweh his God, as his father David had done. But he walked, this is Ahaz, he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, even made his sons pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh had driven out from before the sons of Israel. He sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places and on the high hills and under every high tree. And you'll find, and this is written in the book of Isaiah, and it's written here, the northern kingdom of Israel teams up with Syria, and they are going to come down against the southern kingdom of Judah. And this is really in detail in the book of Isaiah. And rather than trusting in Yahweh, this king Ahaz goes and he pays off the king of Assyria to take out Damascus. And that's what this is about here in verse 5. Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war, and they besieged Ahaz, but they could not overcome him. Verse 7, so Ahaz sent messengers to Tilgath-Pileser, king of Assyria. So he goes to the king of Assyria and says, I am your servant and your son. Come up and deliver me from the hand of the king of Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel, who are rising against me. Ahaz took silver and gold that was found in the house of Yahweh and in the treasuries of the king's house, and sent a present to the king of Assyria. And so the king of Assyria listened to him, and the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and captured it, and carried the people away into exile to Kir, and put Rezin to death. So Ahaz paid Assyrians. They came and they took out the north. First they took out Syria. that nation that sits between Israel and Assyria, or Aram, and they took them away. Assyrians took them over. Now, verse 10, King Ahaz went to Damascus, that was the capital city of Syria, which now is ruled by the Assyrians, to meet Tilgath-Pileser, king of Assyria. And when he was there, he saw the altar which was at Damascus. And King Ahaz said to Uriah the priest, pattern all the altar and model it according to all its workmanship. So Uriah the priest built an altar according to all that King Ahaz had sent from Damascus. Thus Uriah the priest made it before the coming of King Ahaz from Damascus. So basically, he takes the god of Damascus and he replicates the altar of Damascus to that god in the city of Jerusalem, God's temple. He takes this god and puts him in here. Look at 2 Chronicles, First Kings, 2 Chronicles. It gives a little more details about what Ahaz did. 2 Chronicles 28. Second Chronicles 28, verse 1. What I'm trying to do is just give you background and context of now what's going on in the southern kingdom. We had looked at what happened in the northern kingdom. Now we're switching to these prophets that prophesied about the southern kingdom. And this is what's going on in the southern kingdom. Really started to go downhill under this King Ahaz. Chapter 28, verse 1 of 2 Chronicles. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king. And he reigned 16 years in Jerusalem, and he did not do right in the sight of Yahweh as David his father had done. But he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He also made molten images for Baals. Moreover, he burned incense in the valley of Ben-Hinnom and burned his sons in fire, according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh had driven out before the sons of Israel. Ben-Hinnom is a valley in southern Israel, and this is where Ahaz brought this worship, I think it was to the god Molech, that they would burn their sons in the fire in the valley of Hinnom. And Ahaz the one that brought this terrible, evil practice to the southern kingdom of Judah. Why? It boggles the mind to me to think of these things. Verse 16. At that time, now we're going to the same record about him going to Assyria. At that time, King Ahaz sent to the king of Assyria for help. For again, the Edomites had come and attacked Judah and carried away captives. The Philistines also invaded the cities of the lowland. Just a side note, that word lowland in the Hebrew is the Shephelah, which will become up in a minute. So I just want to point out that word in the Hebrew is the Shephelah, the lowland. And of the Negev of Judah, and had taken Beth-Shemesh, Ahijah, Gederath, and Succo with its villages, Timnah with its villages, and Gimzo with its villages, and they settled there. For Yahweh humbled Judah because of Ahaz, king of Israel. For he had brought about a lack of restraint in Judah, and was very unfaithful to Yahweh. So Tilgath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came up against him and afflicted him instead of strengthening him. He paid Assyria to take out those northern nations. He took them out, but they didn't stop. The Assyrians came and invaded Judah and started taking out city after city in southern Judah. Verse 21, although Ahaz took a portion out of the house of Yahweh and out of the palace of the king of the princes and gave it to the king of Syria, it did not help him. It doesn't really help when you pay these kings off, because then they say, hey, you'll give me money. I'll keep attacking, right? Now, in the time of their distress, this same King Ahaz, look at this, became yet more unfaithful. Rather than turning his heart to Yahweh, he became more unfaithful. Verse 23, and he sacrificed to the gods of Damascus, which has defeated him, and said, this is what Ahaz's thinking was, because the gods of the kings of Aram helped them, I will sacrifice to them, that they may help me. But they became the downfall of him and all Israel. Hello, didn't they just get defeated by the Assyrians? But he said, hey, look it, they helped them. Moreover, when Ahaz gathered together the utensils of the house of God, he cut the utensils of the house of God in pieces. And he closed the doors of the house of Yahweh. He closed down the temple. He shut down the temple and put up the demands of gods of Damascus at the location where the temple worship should have been. In every city of Judah, verse 25, he made high places to burn incense to other gods and provoked Yahweh, the God of his fathers, to anger. So that's the time period now that Micah is writing. All right? So you see there's things going on in Judah not too good. Now, let's go to Micah. And we're going to get through chapter 1 tonight. And I'm just going to read this chapter with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, before I read this, in all the 12, when we studied this in our Berean Fellowship and when I've studied it, Micah is the most difficult book for me. And I thought, well, why is it? Well, one, and we're going to see this chapter, there's a bunch of cities. I have no idea where he's talking. I'm sitting there going, where is he talking about? Where are we? And then he also uses a lot of customs and different things about, I don't understand everything he's talking about. So I'll read some of this, and it just takes a long time to research all these things and say, what does that mean? And then the other thing which I think really makes Micah difficult is, in this time period that's in history here, between here and the time of Hezekiah, the Assyrian Empire is going to come in and invade the entire land against all of Judah, to where all that's left is Jerusalem, really. So you have this massive invading army of Assyria. And here in the prophecy of Micah, you'll be reading, and he'll be talking about, he'll bring back historical references of the past. He'll talk about present things happening right now, and then next thing you know, we're defeating the Assyrian in the end of the age. And the way it's written, it's just like, what's he talking about? Where am I? And so, anyways, just to let you know, Micah I found to be the most difficult of all the prophecies. It's great, but it takes, you got to work your mind. And I'm not going to go through all Micah with you, give you a little background, and then you can work your mind and read it for yourself. But chapter 1 of Micah, verse 1. Now the word of Yahweh which came to Micah of Moresheth in the days of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, which he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. Hear, O peoples, all of you. Listen, O earth, and all it contains. And yet let the Lord Yahweh be a witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. For behold, Yahweh is coming forth from his place. He will come down and tread on the high places of the earth. The mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will be split like wax before the fire, like water poured down a steep place. And this is for the rebellion of Jacob, and for the sins of the house of Israel. What is the rebellion of Jacob? Is it not Samaria? What is the high place of Judah? Is it not Jerusalem? This is where these gods are now. For I will make Samaria a heap of ruins in the open country, planting places for a vineyard. I will pour her stones down into the valley, and I will lay bare her foundations. All of her idols will be smashed. All of her earnings will be burned with fire. All of her images I will make desolate. For she collected them from a harlot's earnings, and to the earnings of a harlot they will return. Because of this I must lament and wail. I must go barefoot and naked. I must make a lament like the jackals and a mourning like the ostriches. For her wound is incurable. Talking about northern kingdom, Samaria. It's incurable. It's going down. Verse 9, for it has come to Judah. This sin has now come to Judah. It has reached the gate of my people, even to Jerusalem. This sin has come into the city of God, into Jerusalem. Tell it not in Gath, weep not at all. At Bethla Aphra, roll yourself in the dust. Go on your way, inhabitant of Shapher, in shameful nakedness. The inhabitant of Zaanan does not escape. The lamentation of Beth Ezel, he will take from you its support. For the inhabitant of Meroth becomes weak, waiting for good, because a calamity has come down from Yahweh to the gate of Jerusalem. Harness the chariot to the team of horses, O inhabitant of Lachish, for she was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Zion, because in you were found the rebellious acts of Israel. Therefore you will give parting gifts on behalf of Moresheth Gath. The house of Azib will become a deception to the kings of Israel. Moreover, I will bring on you the one who takes possession, O inhabitant of Mareshah. The glory of Israel will enter Adullam. Make yourself bald and cut off your hair because of the children of your delight. Extend your baldness like the eagle, for they will go for you into exile. Easy peasy, right? So what are all these places? This is what I wrestled with in my mind. So I looked up all these things to try and get an idea of what are we talking about. And I wondered if there was meaning to the names, and this is in your notes. I don't know if you can read it up here, but Moresheth is a city in Gath. Gath is one of the chief cities of the Philistines. Beth La'aprah is the house of Ophrah, or dust. Ophrah is a Philistine city. Saphar means fair, a city in Judah. The site's unknown. Zaanan means pointed, a town in the low country of Judah. Question. These are what people think. Nobody knows for sure. Beth Ezel means house of narrowing, a place in Judah. Meroth means bitterness, a town in the lowland of Judah. Lachish means invincible, a city south of Judah. Moresheth Gath, that's where Micah is from, means a possession of Gath. It's the hometown of Micah. Azib means deceit. It's a town in the lowland west of Judah. Mareshah means a crest of a hill, one of the cities in the lowlands of Judah. And Adullam means justice of the people, a town in the lowland of Judah, a site of the cave where David hid. So as I'm reading through these things and looking at this, I'm like, you know what? These are all cities in the lowlands of Judah. I think, oh! So then I started looking at, I couldn't find any one map that had all these, but I looked at 3 different historical maps to try and get an idea of these cities. And here on your map, you'll see this is the Shephelah. Like over here, you have Jerusalem, Bethlehem. This is a mountain range that goes right through the center of Israel. And this is the high mountains where Jerusalem's on a mountain. This is the mountain range. This down here is a valley. This is the Shephelah, the valley, this lowlands of Judah. And this is where all these cities are. Here's Moresheth Gath, where Micah is from. And then you got Lachish, Mareshah, Beth Ezel, Adullam, Azib. They're all cities here around the area where Micah's from. So you get the idea that he's using these city names as these are the cities around where he's at. These are the cities that are going to be attacked. These are the cities that are going to be taken over by the Assyrians. That's what's happening. All these cities are about to be taken over by the Assyrian Empire. And there's this warning for these cities. And again, I don't understand all the specifics of these prophecies and all these things that they mean. But there are these prophecies against this area of this region of Judah that Micah is from, giving warnings to them about these gods of Samaria, of the northern kingdom, have come down to Jerusalem. And they're at the gate of Jerusalem. And all these cities have these prophecies against them. Specifically, the one that caught my attention is verse 13, and this is Lachish, which is right here. Lachish, and remember, Lachish meant invincible, and it was a strong city in southern Judah. And it says in verse 13, harness the chariot to a team of horses. You know what that means? Get ready for war. Harness the chariots. O inhabitants of Lachish. And look what it says here. This was interesting. She, talking about Lachish, was the beginning of sin to the daughter of Zion, because in you were found the rebellious acts of Israel. I get the idea that Lachish was the area where the sin first came down into Judah. Lachish was, it says, in you were found this. She was the beginning of the sin that entered into Judah in Lachish. And then it says in verse 14, and here I read the commentaries and I still don't quite. Therefore you, talking about Lachish, will be giving parting gifts on behalf of Moresheth Gath. Parting gifts is used as a dowry, which you pay to a bride in a wedding. And I still don't quite understand what that means. Maybe work that in your brain and come back and let me know what it means. Because, you know, and I can't tell if it's saying Moresheth Gath is going to be the gift or if Lachish. But anyways, just to go to the city of Lachish, what's interesting about here is there's been quite a lot of archaeological digs in this region, this area of Lachish, where they've discovered a lot of things. And 14 years into the kingdom of Hezekiah, it says, now in the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Israel, came up against all the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. Then Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at where? Lachish, saying, I have done wrong. Withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. So the king of Assyria required of Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. He paid off to help, try and help Lachish. I don't know if that has anything to do with this dowry, but he paid off the king of Assyria. And this happened in the 14th year of Hezekiah. This is the result of this sin and these prophecies that Micah said were going to happen. Here and this is in your notes too, that stone, that is from the British Museum in London. This is an Assyrian art, and those guys that is the attack of Lachish. And that one thing in the middle there, I believe, is some type of catapult. And you got the guys, the archers, and then you got the city, and that's the Assyrian Empire attacking the city of Lachish. They've also discovered all sorts of, I remember Brad and I went down to New York City when they had the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they had a bunch of artifacts, and one of the big artifacts they had are all the arrowheads and all these warfare of things that they found in Lachish from this attack when they attacked this city of Lachish, when the Assyrians came in. So it's a known battle. And here is a writer wrote about this. The Assyrian rulers glorified war. They developed special corps, cavalry, sappers, combat engineers, snipers, aquatic units, and modernized their weapons and strategies. The Assyrians surmounted the town's defenses as they did, according to Sennacherib's own account, at 45 other Judean towns. Inside Lachish's walls, the site is undeveloped and only partially excavated. There's evidence of fierce burning at the level of the Assyrian invasion. Arrowheads, sling stones, and the crest of an Assyrian helmet offer only hints of the tumult and destruction highlighted in the Assyrian frieze. I think these cities right here are all part of those 45 cities that were defeated like this from the Assyrian army. And Micah, in his hometown in the area, is prophesying about what is about to happen to these cities in the lowlands. What is about to happen to these cities when the Assyrians are going to come in. And so this lays the background of the rest of this book. And the rest of this book, understanding this is at a time when Israel had sinned, that Judah had sinned, the southern kingdom of Judah. And you're going to see as he prophesies to them then about their sin. He prophesies to them about the destruction and devastation that is going to come upon them. You got that? He's prophesying about this Assyrian Empire that's about to come down and destroy them. And then Micah switches in his prophecy, and he talks about the day of the Lord when the Assyrian is going to be defeated, and the Messiah is coming, and a new governor that's going to rule God's people is going to come in. And that's what we're going to look at next week in this great prophecy of Micah. But you get this background of understanding he's prophesying at a time just before they're about to be invaded by the great Assyrian army. And then he gives us great insight about what's going to happen in the end times. It's really a cool book. Read it next week. We'll look at that. And then we'll also probably get into the book of Nahum next week. So that'll be next week. Micah, part 2, and Nahum. All right.